you've got about a 2% chance of having a baby. And I was like, oh, hang on. He goes, you're perimenopause. What the hell is he talking about?
Well, how long?
I didn't have any standout symptoms,
Right.
but my bloods were saying, my hormone reading was actually saying a totally different story as well.
Let's dive into perimenopause.
I had perimenopause symptoms and I had Ross, and they're very similar symptoms, you know, inflammation, joint swelling, anxiety, depression.
And really start to focus on how important it is to have this information earlier.
It's not just that our hormones are dramatically changing, it's also that there's often a crossover of lifestyle changes that are happening at the same time.
What am I supposed to do?
We're so much more reactive to the environment that we're in. So we need a huge amount of downregulation.
At what point were you like, hang on a minute, things are changing. Could this be perimenopause?
Look, it was quite interesting because
Hi everyone, excited for this episode of The Wellness Collective today. We're going to chat with nutritionist Zoe Bingley-Pullin today. You might have seen her on television or you might have actually read, you've written other books?
Yes.
She's right here. Read other books that Zoe's written, but she's been in the industry for a very long time, although she's very youthful but a wealth of information. We're going to get straight into this episode today. Zoe, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm very excited for this conversation.
Thanks, Nat. It's lovely to be here.
Yeah.
I've always loved talking health, and you're the perfect person to talk to.
I know when I saw that you'd written a new book, how exciting, and then I saw what it was about, I was like, oh, okay, let's talk
Yes.
this. Because it's one thing for me to say it, but it's really nice when there's other people that have had their experience and their own fertility journey, especially as we're, you know, approaching our mid-years. I don't know what we call that.
No, I know. Where is it? What's the safe place to call this? I mean, the fucking awesome stage of our life.
I do think
that's personally what I feel.
I do think you're onto something there. No, I think you're onto something there. As we were just chatting before, I've just come back from a month away with two children who are now 12 and 16. And what a delight it is to take children that don't need nappy changes, that don't like.
Oh, my God. I mean, my daughter Emily is 10 years old, and it's a very interesting stage because I was only saying this to my husband Michael the other day. I was like, I can finally, without guilt, go away because I work in Melbourne and I work in Sydney and I'm sort of traveling around all the time. But I don't feel like I've got this guilt that I used to have because she's so able to do everything now. And also I think, you know, being hormones is the topic of the actual book, and not to kind of just dive into the book. But I mean, I was laughing with someone saying, I'm at this stage of my life where my daughter will get her period and I'll lose my period. So I'm like, it's actually quite nice maybe not to be around her for a little bit.
You know what's interesting about that, which is completely off topic, but in the years before girls get their periods, their moods are all over the place. At least once they get their period, it's actually a little bit more predictable. You can kind of go with it. And then we're going to get the opposite. We're going to be all over the place.
So, I mean, there's a reason why I think they call perimenopause the second, you know, stage of when, you know,
second puberty.
I mean, that's, you can see and you can feel what these kids are going through because we are going through it again ourselves.
But the difference is that we actually know who we are. Whereas when you're going through puberty, when you're younger, you've got no sense of who you are,
I'm so
right?
glad not to be going through. I mean, I did not enjoy it.
No.
Did not enjoy being young. I love being 46 years old. I love the wisdom. I love the ability to unabashedly say, no, sorry, that doesn't work for me anymore. Just move on to the next topic as well without having to kind of dive too deeply into those guilt mechanisms that we have over the course of our life kind of, you know, ensued into our temperament to make everything better.
I love this. Well, let's dive into perimenopause because that was what fueled your last, well, how long? 5, 10 years.
Oh, wow. It's been a while.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing because I don't think it's not spoken about enough.
No.
Right?
No.
I think it's the fertile years we talk about, and then we talk about menopause. And then there's these years, and it can be many years in between, where it's kind of like an abyss of goodness knows
no man's
what.
land.
Well, you're still fertile. You can still have children, but things are a little bit wonky and no one talks about
Love
it.
that wonky.
What was your experience? At what point were you like, hang on a minute, things are changing. Could this be perimenopause?
Look, it was quite interesting because I had Emily. I was 46 years old. I, you know, naturally kind of wanted to live in that bubble a little bit. It was a bit hard. I was still working, juggling, doing all the things we still put that hat on and think that we can do. I would have in hindsight, I would like to have stopped a little bit and slowed
No
it
one can
down
tell
a little
us
bit.
this.
But anyway, it is what it is. And I had gone down the path of we had some embryos frozen, and I thought, look, let's do this again. So I was 39. My gorgeous IVF doctor had left, and so I went and saw a new doctor, also equally as competent, maybe not so great on the bedside manner component, but it is what it is. And I had said to them, look, I want to start trying for a baby again. And, you know, they said, oh, here you go get the ultrasound, go get the bloods. I mean, here we are, the pin cushion again. I was like, here.
And you've been through it before, so you're fully new.
This would have been the 7th time.
Right.
So I was like, okay, well, here we go again. And then when I came back with the results, it was almost like this kind of like moment. And I was like, what's going on? Shit, what's going on? Do I have cancer? Is something going on? And the doctor said, look, the reality is your AMH levels, which is your anti-malarial hormone, which is your indicator of, you know, how many eggs you have, it's pretty much non-existent. So he goes, you've got about a 2% chance of having a baby. And I was like, oh, hang on. He goes, you're perimenopausal.
Right.
And I was like, oh, hang on, hold on. And I just kind of had this kind of like, what the hell is he talking about moment? And it did make me think, with all my knowledge as a nutritionist and my years of working with clients, why was I shocked by this? Like, because I didn't have any standout symptoms,
right,
but my bloods were saying, my hormone reading was actually saying a totally different story as well. I think in hindsight, what it would have been great is if he'd actually said to me, look, this is the case, but this is what you can do. And I wasn't given that as an option. I was just given a finite, almost like a diagnosis.
right.
I was told that it's off the cards. Of course, me being me, I was like, well, you can go stuff yourself. And I thought I'd give it a red hot go anyway. So we went down the path, fell pregnant. Unfortunately, ended up having what's called a moro pregnancy, which is when the embryo is growing. So the embryo is not growing, but your sac is. So you have all these raging hormones. Your body thinks you're pregnant. And unfortunately, you're not pregnant. And the advice that I was given was to just let myself naturally miscarriage as well, which was incredibly traumatic.
Yeah.
Absolutely awful. I ended up on the, sorry to be too graphic here, but I ended up, in hospital, hemorrhaging all over the floor. My daughter was there. It was just not a fun situation.
Mm.
But I think what that did, it sort of opened my eyes up to, first of all, the conversation, I think was the key thing. I kind of thought, well, why is it that we're not talking about this more? I then started to kind of look into sort of what clearly were those symptoms and realized I did actually have a lot of those symptoms. I had low-lying anxiety. I was getting very slight changes in my cycle. I'd always been relatively regular. I'd been lucky from that point of view. The reason why I couldn't have children was because I miscarried and had an ectopic pregnancy when I was very young. And as a result, I was advised to clamp both my fallopian tubes as well. I've got another story of something that's happening.
Another whole
There's
story,
a whole nother, and another story that's happened to me recently, which again just keeps instilling this conversation of be your own detective, ask the questions, keep pushing. Doesn't matter who you are with what knowledge, because sometimes I think as practitioners, you might know this feeling. We feel like we shouldn't be asking, we should know.
Right.
And I'm thinking, I got to kind of sometimes take that hat off and realize I'm a woman, a mom who still doesn't always know how to diagnose their own situations as well.
I love that point. And I also think it's really easy to look at other people and be able to, as a practitioner, see what they need.
Yeah.
But when it comes to what you need, like there's really, as much as we'd love that to be the case, it's really not. And that's a hard thing. That's a hard pill to swallow too.
Look, I think I don't in any way think that I'm a perfectionist, but I think what I've done over the course of my own life is I've kind of put pressure on myself to know it all without being a know-it-all.
Right.
And just and just maybe I definitely haven't allowed myself to breathe a little bit with my own traumas that I've gone through this. And I think that actually did play it amplified, I think, a lot of my perimenopausal symptoms. When I went into, deeper down that path of perimenopause, I'm almost out of it now. I'm almost 6 months without a cycle now. God, I actually feel a lot more balanced.
I joke. I always say, do we really want to be changing tampons at 55 years of age?
No.
We definitely don't.
No, I certainly don't.
We can actually rejoice in this.
I could go on a holiday and not worry about wearing white for once.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's lots of different elements as well.
So, I mean, I love this because there's so many parts of this I'd love to unpack. But I think the really important thing is that very often we adopt someone else's opinion as our fact.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm hearing. I talk about this a lot, but I'm hearing that that's what happened, and that's okay. But also the other thing too is that if you were to do nothing different, that fact remains, right? And I think it's our job to ask questions, why, what else, be curious, and start to change some of the variables.
Yeah, look, I think particularly when it comes to hormones, we often generalize and we talk about these reproductive hormones, or we talk about, steroid, or, the different formation of hormones, and we go, well, if you've got that, I must be similar. We seem similar. We eat the same. We live a similar lifestyle. Well, why aren't I like you? Or why isn't this happening to me? And yes, I mean, we can't necessarily, unfortunately, at this point in time, completely individualize, but we can take a more individualized approach about what sort of methodology and what nutrition, what mental health approaches, what pharmaceutical, conventional medicine, what that individual actually needs as well. And again, the more we talk about this and the more we dig a little deeper, the less we will become sort of stagnant in those viewpoints.
Yeah.
And we will kind of be able to go to our GP and say, I know that there's a test that you could do for this. Is that the right test for me? What else is there?
Yes.
Because I think we do sometimes feel intimidated. I've recently changed doctors because I've got a gorgeous friend, Baha Etmahan, who's also got a great podcast as well. And she was like, I've got this great doctor, go and see her. She's really open to you asking any question.
Right.
And I literally came with a list like this and was like, okay, page 1. Blah, 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 blah. 10 pages later, I'm like, page 10. She was amazing. She was receptive to everything I asked about. She didn't judge me. She didn't, because I'm 45 and healthy, she didn't assume that I didn't need a bone density.
Right.
She didn't assume that I needed, to have, like whatever breast checks I needed. She just said, yes, well, you sound like you've done the research. Let's see whether let's try this thing first. And then if that shows up, if those markers, then we'll go. And I just felt so heard.
And taken care of.
And nourished. Yeah, which we all need.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter what we do.
We
need
really
that
do.
mum hug to us all the time.
Yeah, we do. So your experience at that time when your specialist had said, look, the AMH is low, which is a really common thing. And obviously as we get older, it's supposed to decline.
It's supposed to decline.
And I often say to patients too, stress will speed it up, so to speak. Stress speeds everything up.
Yeah.
It's aging. It speeds everything up. Now, that's not to sit here and say if we were to be like, just don't stress.
Well,
the majority of listeners are like, I'm going to punch you in the face. Like, that's just not reality, right? But I do think that it's interesting. Hindsight's a wonderful thing,
Ain't
right?
it just?
But at the same time, the message is important because I don't know how we speak to the 30-year-old, speak to the 25-year-old that might be listening and really start to focus on how important it is to have this information earlier.
Yeah. I think it's important to, I always talk about creating that baseline. And I think, because when we look at pathology, often what happens is that, those ranges that we're looking at are reflective of unwell people as opposed to well people. So we need to understand sort of what our baseline is. And to be really honest, guys, the government gives us these, tests for free. Go and take them.
Yeah.
Take them every 6 months. You can be covered by Medicare to do predominantly most tests, your full blood counts, general hormone and what have you. And so go and ask for these. The annoying thing is often you have to have a symptom to justify the cause. Right. So look up the symptoms.
Right. Well, this is true too. Sometimes I'll send patients in and I'll say, just tell them these are the symptoms.
Totally.
And
tell the symptoms.
You'll get
and it's not that you are being a hypochondriac or that it's simply because the system is geared that way. If every single person was coming in and asking for 1,000 tests, Medicare would crash. So, they're being conservative and they're trying to make sure that only the people who need them get them. But the reality is we're talking preventative health.
Well, the other thing too is I'll say to patients, you can't go back and get that information.
No.
You can't go, I'm just going to go back to a year's time and I'll collect that and then compare it to where I'm at now.
No.
So it's up to us to advocate, I think.
Absolutely.
That's what you're saying, ask for it. And if you don't get it, then ask someone else. That's
Yeah.
what I always
Look,
say.
got some fabulous doctors out there.
Really,
but
there is. There really is.
Lots of not so fabulous doctors out there as well. And not that we are advocating doctor shopping, because we're not, but talk to your girlfriends, talk to your male friends, find out who they've seen.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's how I got. I mean, you would think that I would have a plethora of great GPs out there. But interestingly enough, when I had Emily, I had the most incredible doctor, and I loved her. And she had been my doctor for 5 years. She was Emily's doctor for 5 years, and then she decided to move to Cairns. So
how dare she have a life in Cairns?
How dare she move away? So I found it quite challenging to sort of then kind of slip into that format of finding what I needed as well. Also because it's hard historically sometimes to go back and tell the whole story again. And I was seeing a new GP and trying to get them to sort of see it from my point of view of why I needed to have certain things, looked at based on the sort of where I had been previously as well. So it's important. Talk to your friends. I think it's a great way to kind of then siphon through the good and the bad sort of
so
GPs.
True. And your friends are often like you. They like similar things and will resonate with similar people. So you received this news, and obviously, as you did, you went on a path of learning and discovery. But when it came to nutrition, what were some of the key things that you uncovered that previously maybe you weren't actually speaking to or educating your audience with?
Yeah, look, it's really interesting, and I think it was the link to inflammation, and it was probably the link to stress and liver. So there were sort of three sort of areas that I sort of very much tailored. I'd had an interesting thing happen in sort of the meantime. I'd actually got Ross River virus.
Oh my gosh, I had Ross River as a child.
Oh, it's awful. It is awful. Interesting enough, like I went and saw the top viral specialist, and he's like, my God, you're doing everything right, but what it was is that I had perimenopause symptoms and I had Ross River, and they're very similar symptoms, inflammation, joint swelling, anxiety, depression. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
So what was interesting is I had gone down this path and addressed the CRP, or the C-reactive protein, the inflammation markers. And as a result, my symptoms changed dramatically. And then when I started to applying this to my clients, same thing happened. So I kind of took a slightly different direction, and I looked at, rather than kind of what are the hormones and what is it making, but what is the environment doing? What is our environment doing that's able to then synthesize our hormones or metabolize our hormones, or, those pathways, particularly when we look at sort of liver in itself, we have these estrogenic pathways. We need to basically clear them out so we're not basically reabsorbing them into our system as well. So it got me to look at it slightly different. It got me to look at my nutrition slightly different, the supplements I was taking as well. And I very much went down that very strong anti-inflammatory pathway, which was dramatically different because I saw and I felt instantly better.
Yeah.
It down-regulated everything, and it was like a big bloody fire hydrant absolutely everywhere, which I think, as we know, stress is a component of that. My diet had always been good, but, if your stress is overrunning and overriding everything, then it's hard for anything.
You can't outrun it.
You cannot. I tried. I was like, nothing to see here.
Right. It's very interesting that you say that. And I think a lot of women are now probably realizing, especially after COVID being another similar virus.
Absolutely.
That was my experience. And I, for a long time, experienced what I thought was long COVID. And now I actually just don't know. Was it a mixture of long COVID and perimenopause, or was it one, or was it the other? And I'm probably never going to actually have the answer.
Can't. Yeah, unfortunately.
But I think that there was a realization. I was like, hang on a minute, that all happened at the same time. Well, around the same time. And I think we're probably seeing there's a group of women that are in our age group that maybe, I hope are listening and going, oh, hang on a minute, that could be me. I thought it was long COVID, or I just thought it was COVID, post-COVID, and actually it's my hormones changing. So I think that is really interesting. And also, what would you say, is it important, therefore, the what you would be advocating for in terms of nutrition in our 40s is actually different to our 20s, and maybe is it then, are we curious about beyond that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely think there are different stages and phases that we need different styles of nutrition. I mean, you look at those pre-teens, you've got these surging of growth hormones as well. They're made differently as well. They're synthesized differently. So therefore the diet needs to be slightly different as a result. You've got, your teens coming in where you actually need a big surge of iron in there as well. So they're more likely to need more magnesium in there, more those uptakers, things that will absorb that iron more effectively. And then when we get to our stage, it's not just that our hormones are dramatically changing. It's also that there's often a crossover of lifestyle changes that are happening at the same time. Often we have a young child, an older parent. We're in the full throes of our career as well. So our time, abilities is lessened. Our stress mechanisms are raging. We're so much more reactive to the environment that we're in. So we need a huge amount of down regulation. Those adaptogenic herbs are they're like key for these times as well. And again, then we look at sort of those older, when we, our, estrogen levels are very different as well. We don't need those levels of, supportive other foods in there. We just need to basically make sure that we are actually supporting our body correctly as well.
Right.
So it is important to kind of look at these stages differently. But overall, hormones are all potentially made the same way,
right. Yeah.
So if we don't have, good protein in our diet, if we don't have good fats in our diet as well, and we don't have the ability to absorb, and it doesn't matter what phase that you're in, if you don't have what I kind of call that core structural environment, then it's going to affect you at any stage as well. I mean, we look so much now at gut health. I mean, there are certain bacterias that we know actually, support, synthesize and remove estrogen as well. And if we don't have those, and how do you get those? We talk about diversity, eating as much diverse diet as well. I was laughing with someone, they're like, where does alcohol come in diversity? And I was like,
sadly,
not quite sure. But it might do the opposite. I'm not sure.
That's where you've got to, well, that's something that a lot of women will say though, as they get older, they tolerate it less and less.
Yeah, definitely. Look, I mean, sadly to say, I can't drink wine anymore. Maybe it's a good thing.
Yeah, I know, right?
So,
although I have just come back, like I said, from a month in Greece.
So that's an interesting...
The wine is very different.
So I was about to say, predominantly the issue is that you've got inflammation on inflammation. So you've got histamines as well. So it's not just the ethanol, the alcohol content, albeit though, old world wines like your Spanish and your Greek and your Italian, they don't put the level of preservatives in it, but they also don't have the level of alcohol in it as well.
Right.
So you've got two elements which are lessened.
Yeah.
And then if you are, drinking less of those histamine sort of alcohols, light white wines and what have you, often the effect is a little bit better overall.
I think that I definitely found that.
Yeah.
I've come back and I'm not inflamed, and I think we probably drank every day.
Maybe not so stressed.
It wasn't a lot, and definitely not as stressed.
Not as stressed.
It wasn't a lot of alcohol, but it was definitely a glass of wine with dinner.
Yeah.
And also, when in Rome, except when in Greece. But my husband would sit down for dinner and be like, you want a rosé? Sure, I'll have a rosé. And it was just, it doesn't take much.
I think there's there's a difference between celebration of food and we just have a really strange
the other thing too,
culture in Australia.
Absolutely, we really do. But the other thing too is that it was always so much activity. It was a big walk after dinner. That makes a huge difference too. And then you come back and you've got to readjust and you're like, well, the wine's not the same for starters, so that's not happening anymore.
No, it's quite funny because I've got a new puppy and it's like, it is literally like having a baby again. It's wonderful.
Yes, it would be like having a baby again.
I love it. But talking about your walk after dinner, so I've been taking him for a walk after dinner, and there is something so therapeutic. It's like the most gorgeous digestive aid. It's where you you mull over the day a little bit, which is then you don't do it before you go to bed.
Right.
So that's a one to tick that box.
Yes.
You just by the, natural process of walking, you get the digestion happen as well. And it's just, that pensive time when you can just see, if I forgot how much of a beautiful elixir it actually was as well.
It also helps when the days get longer.
Well, I did say that. I was like, I started it in March. I've gone through that. I've gone all through winter, so it's only going to get better from here.
I mean, that was the one thing also when we got back home again and it got to 6 o'clock
dark.
And it's not dark anymore. I'm like, this is...
Yeah, no, I was the same.
I really struggle.
Obviously, I live in Sydney, and Sydney, it's lighter earlier in the morning. So my thing is, obviously, having worked on Good Chef, Bad Chef for 5 years, I could never actually get over the morning still being light at 7 o'clock.
I know.
So being dark at 7 a.m.
Yes.
I was like, can it please just get light?
I know. It does things to your brain. We know that it does things to your brain. It just doesn't anyway. I always have a saying that fertility isn't about babies.
Yes.
And I would love to hear your take on that.
Yes.
Because to me, fertility, I feel like we've got it a little bit messed up. We think about, if I say to someone, or back in the day where my expertise was just fertility, they'd say, oh, I don't need you.
Yeah.
I'm like, but do you?
Yeah.
Because I just see that as being overall health.
Yeah. So I mean, we're looking at sex hormones, right? We're looking, sex hormones are, whether you're having a child or not having a child, they're very important.
They really are.
They're fundamentally there, and we need to support them correctly as well. So look, I definitely, and when I read that question, I was a bit like, what do you actually mean by that? And then I kind of gave it some thought myself as well. And I think to discriminate, it's almost discriminative to actually say to someone that health is about fertility.
Right.
Because the reality is that I might not have had a child. That's one component of my own life. It's our prerogative and our choice to choose whether we want children or not. There's a lot of in the world. We don't need as many as what we need anyway. And, I think it's just like looking at health that simplistically is stupid. It's unnecessary as well. So, looking at the different reproductive hormones at different stages and what we can do to support them is nothing to do with fertility. It's to do with health.
Right. And that's what I'm trying to constantly help people to understand. It's not a tap. We just don't turn it on and off.
No, we don't.
Like we get to a point where we can't have children anymore, but I think we sort of have seen it this way for a long time. And I think it's really nice to have these conversations based on your experience and saying, okay, I got to a certain age, didn't realize that my hormones had changed. And I don't want women to fear that either. 35 is around the age we start to move into, we know ovarian reserve starts to decline around then. It doesn't mean you can't have children. Everyone's circumstances are different. But I do think that having the conversation allows women to maybe think about it a little bit earlier and really prepare.
I think also, we want to give our daughters, our sons, the ability to know what the landscape looks like. So nothing comes as a surprise. And I think for myself and maybe a lot of your clients and yourself, things came as a surprise. And I think that's when you feel very unnerved, and then you apply, a lot of stress gets, and shame gets applied to it as well. You feel, God, Jesus, is there something wrong with me? Whether you like it or not, no matter how resilient you are, you will attribute that to something you've done wrong. As we don't know, genetics, environment, there are so many circumstances that play a part in this as well. So I think if we could just even give this very vague blueprint from birth of what we should be looking for, would be wonderful. And it should be part of, the protocol when you see your GP. It's, my daughter's an interesting topic. She's an amazing, amazing little girl. I'm so grateful that it took all this long to get her, because she's fucking awesome, absolutely awesome. But interesting, being, she was about 8 years old, and she decided that she didn't want to eat meat. And I said, I'll support that. Absolutely. If anyone can help you with that, no problem, I'll do it. I said, provided that if you get these symptoms, and I said, you start to feel a little bit fatigued, your mood gets a little bit off, your heart starts to race a little bit unnecessarily, we get a blood test. I said, because the only way that I can really, really, really know what's going on is if we see what's going on in your blood. And she's like, oh, I don't like the idea. And I said, well, no, well then let's look at a different. She said, no, I'll do that. Year and a half later, I'm plying her with everything, every other, iron, non-heme iron-rich food you can possibly think of. But there was going to get a point, because of based on her activity levels, her iron levels weren't going to catch up. Historically, got a very similar biology. It happened to me. It was more than likely going to happen to her as well. Sure enough, 9.5, we got the blood test. But what it did, which was fascinating, it actually gave her this great insight into understanding what was going on with her body. What she should be looking for as well. And interesting, then it skewed her decision. She goes, well, you know what, Mum? I think what I'll do is I'll start eating a bit of fish. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this and this. And we started to put this plan together just based on this little piece of information that we had. What I found fascinating, though, as well, was the response from the GP.
Right.
I was quite shocked. This wasn't my GP.
Right.
This was kind of, again, I was sort of in that in-between phase of finding this current GP I'm with as well now. The levels had come back. Fortunately, Emily hadn't come to this particular appointment. I was quite glad she didn't witness this. And the GP had given me the results, and I said, great. He said, look, your daughter's deficient in iron. And I thought, okay, he didn't know what I did. And I said, look, can you please tell me what we should do here? I was shocked by the advice I was given. He told me to take an adult dose iron. He told me to take a really poor quality iron. He told me to take iron every day, and he told me to take iron with yogurt.
What?
So as you and I know,
Wow.
I was like, wow. For one
Okay.
thing, children and adult doses are vastly different.
Right.
Iron only needs to be taken every second day. Otherwise,
Yeah.
it really, the molecules in a poor quality iron will basically disrupt your gut. But also what they do is they'll put some sort of sugar in it to actually aggravate your gut, which then could cause leaky gut syndrome down the line.
And
further
malabsorption and all the things.
So further precipitate the issue that's at hand.
Yes.
And dairy, and so calcium and iron compete.
Right.
I was just
That's
like, oh my
crazy.
God, this is a doctor in Bondi telling me this. So I was quite taken back by
Yes.
that process, knowing that
Right.
there were so many other things that I could be advocating for and giving as well. But digressing slightly, what it really did open up that conversation with my daughter about what is normal when it comes to understanding your body as well. You know, that we do need to have that little bit of paper sometimes of understanding what's going on with our bloods so we can create that sort of blueprint of what to do next as well.
Right. I love that too. And I think, and I know you're on the same page with this because you're not here to discredit any doctor.
God, no.
The
Oh, my
point being
God,
is,
no.
though, they don't get training like you've
No.
trained for a long time
Yeah.
to be an expert when
Yeah.
it comes to nutrition.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I don't know that we're still at a point where we realize generally that we've all got different roles to play as health
Absolutely.
providers and, working together. I
Yeah.
think that's why I always say you need your cheer squad.
Totally.
You need your nutritionist. You
Yeah.
need your doctor.
Yeah.
You might need your naturopath or whoever
Yeah.
else. And you bring them all together
Yeah.
and they're your cheer squad.
Absolutely. I mean, to get this kind of, mirepoix, this wonderful holistic team behind you is fantastic. Unfortunately, it costs money.
Well, this is true
And
too.
this is
or
the-
lots of research yourself.
Yeah,
There's a lot of people
exactly.
out there now that are very savvy and
Yeah.
are asking to your
Yes.
point the why.
Great.
Why is this happening
Yeah.
to me? And I think that that's what it's always got to
Yeah.
come back to.
Look,
Like if we can ask why.
Yeah, absolutely. I get really excited. I mean, not that I'm, advocating overly things like ChatGPT and things like
Right.
that. But the reality is like fantastically, there is a vehicle out there that people can start that process
Right.
themselves as well. Because the last thing we want is you've got to be wealthy to be healthy.
Yeah.
It's a discrimination. It's not right. But in saying that, there should be, that first point of call often is a GP. And again, there's some really great ones out there that just will, like you said, ask. They'll
Or
nourish that
refer on.
why.
They'll often say, here, go and see this person when
Totally,
it comes
yeah.
to how to do that.
Yeah.
This is not my area.
Yeah.
You need to actually get a plan in
Absolutely.
place.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And look, I mean, we don't want, we don't want one role doing everything anyway, because they need to focus on what they're really good
Yeah,
at.
that's so true. But it is important, I think, to your point, to have the right information.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of, this is the other thing. My daughter is studying health and human development.
Yeah.
And I was testing her on
I'm
some
interested
of
to
the,
hear about this.
Okay,
Yeah.
right. And I looked at her and I said, sweetie, this is wrong.
Yeah.
And she said, well, what am I supposed to do? And I said, you have to learn it wrong because otherwise you're not going to pass your test.
Oh, it's terrible.
And then I'm going to have to reteach you.
Oh, that's terrible.
We're still like what's being taught is still very outdated.
Oh,
it's still blaming, salt for what sugar does and those sorts of things.
I found it's quite interesting
Yes.
because I actually asked to see with PDHD. I actually asked to see the book of what, because my daughter came home and she goes, you know what, Mum, we're learning about the body, and I was like, I just straight went in. I was like, oh, you're learning about sex? She goes, oh no. I was like, oh God. Okay,
You're like,
right.
okay, let's get into this
I was
now.
like, all right. No. She's like, no, we're learning about periods. And like, I've had this conversation for so long with her as well. I remember her being a little girl and she's like, what are you doing there? And I was like, oh, it's
Yes.
a tampon. I've got my
Yes.
period, and just totally normalizing what it is, that beautiful
Yes.
female function that we've got as well. But then I looked through her book, just pure, I wasn't looking at it from a
Interest.
critique point of view.
Right.
I was making sure that I was being similar on the dialogue that she was being taught. I didn't want me to be kind of yapping on in this tone when we're over on this tone
Yeah.
as well. It's just confusing,
Yes.
ultimately as well. It was a little, it was just felt so mundane,
Yeah.
the way they were teaching this. It also felt very separate. There was like very much the boys and then the girls, and it wasn't kind of like, this language wasn't kind of being taught in a way that sort of, didn't demonize one being
Right,
the other
the
or what
other.
have you, which I found quite interesting as well.
It is interesting. You'll find that it
Yes.
keeps on
Oh,
being
great, thank
interesting.
you.
I
like,
think it's just
I'll be
about
calling
having,
you.
I just think that it's important for us to answer our children's questions at the times that they ask
Absolutely,
us and
yeah.
also be the example.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
which is what you're talking
monkey
about.
Monkey see,
doing.
monkey do. I mean, sometimes I'm like, monkey, please don't see.
I know.
And please don't do.
Shut your eyes. Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing today.
Yeah,
I'm really
thank
excited
you.
for everyone to be able to access your new book.
Yes.
Do you want to give us the title before we finish?
Yes, it's called Eat Your Way to Healthy Hormones.
Amazing.
So, phases for all stages of our life, men and women as well. I wanted to make sure that there was a bit of that Bible that we could quickly reference and get just a little bit of a necessary information that could sort of send us in the right direction to good health.
Awesome. And it's available, I should say, not available, available in all bookstores. Thank you so much, Zoe, for being here today.
Thanks, everyone, for listening.
Hey there, it's Nat Kringoudis, host of the Wellness Collective podcast. I know how important it is to have a safe space for women's health, and that's why we created NK the Membership, an online sanctuary where you can access expert guidance and support right from home. Get early access to monthly masterclasses, unlimited access to our entire catalogue, and practical resources to achieve hormone harmony. Plus, enjoy a 20% discount on supplements and join my monthly live Q&A sessions. Join our community of like-minded women and wellness experts to revolutionise your health one topic at a time. Visit our website and sign up now. It's legit Netflix for hormones.